In this video, you're going to learn how to make an adorable needle book in the shape of a house from my book, Sewing for Kids. I'm Alexa, author of Sewing for Kids, and welcome to my channel. This is all about teaching you how to sew while making cute and trendy projects. So if you're interested in that, please make sure that you subscribe, and if you learned something from this video, make sure to hit that like button. In this video, I'm going to teach you the 6 basic steps of hand sewing while making a cute needle book in the shape of a house. 6 basic steps are: 1. What materials to use for each project. 2. How to print your pattern. 3. How to pin and cut your fabric. 4. How to thread your needle and tie a knot. 5. How to sew. And 6. How to tie a finishing knot. Stay tuned till the end, where I'm going to show you how to do an extra stitch, the running stitch, while adding some cute details to your house. For this project, you're going to need the printout of the needle house from my book, Sewing for Kids, and I'm going to link that. So if you look here, it's 5 inches by 3 inches, and you could just create your own little pattern. You're also going to need a pair of scissors. Typically when we sew, we have 2 different pairs. We have a fabric pair and a paper pair, and the fabric pair never gets used on anything besides fabric. That's gonna keep it sharp. I'm gonna link my fabric scissors that I recommend. They're inexpensive and they're really sharp. You're also gonna need a piece of felt. For this project, you will need just 1 piece of felt, but if you stay tuned to the end and you wanna add the extra details that we're adding, you might want a contrast piece of felt. You're gonna need straight pins, and straight pins are used for sewing when we pin the paper to the felt, or if you're pinning 2 pieces of fabric together or more. I prefer these straight pins with a little ball on the end. They're easier to pick up. You're also gonna need embroidery floss. Our embroidery floss is different than regular thread because it is thicker. It has 6 strands, and you'll see later that we're gonna separate it into 3 strands while we're sewing to make it not as thick. But we like the thickness because it adds a little extra detail when we're sewing and you can see it better. And you're going to need a needle to sew. The needle you're going to choose is going to have a bigger hole if you're using the embroidery floss. So something like an embroidery needle is going to be perfect for this. If you don't have embroidery floss, it's totally fine to use regular thread for this project. You just won't see the stitching as much. So the first thing you're gonna need is the printout of the needle house. What you're gonna do is you're gonna go to the website in the link below. Before you hit print, make sure that you check that the scale is set to 100%. Now that it's printed, you're gonna take your ruler and you're gonna just double check that that square is 1 inch by 1 inch. So now you're gonna take your paper scissors and you're gonna cut this out. And now we have our pattern. I'm going to take my felt, and I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm gonna match my corners really well because I'm actually gonna skip cutting 2 of the sides. I'm going to take my pattern and I'm going to place it on there. I'm gonna pin my pattern for cutting, which means that my pins are gonna be inside the paper and they're not gonna stick out. That's super important because we don't want any pins sticking out because then we're gonna ruin our scissors when we're cutting. I'm gonna take my fabric scissors now, and when I'm cutting, I wanna lay everything down really flat on the table, and I'm gonna cut along the outside. Now I have this perfectly cut, unpin, and I'm going to remove my pattern, place it down somewhere else, and now I have my 2 pieces of fabric. Now we need to thread our needle. First, you're gonna find your needle, found it, and then you're gonna pick your color thread. I'm gonna use this teal. It's gonna stand out a bit. It's also gonna look cute. So when we do it, we're gonna cut a strand that's as long as our arm and a little bit longer. So I like to do from my arm to my opposite shoulder. I'm going to cut that. You can see that I have 3 and 3 strands in my hand. And now I'm going to separate my thread. I'm gonna take my extra strand, I'm gonna put it aside. I'm gonna use that later. Like the end and squeeze it really tight and poke it through the center of your needle. Once your needle's threaded, you're gonna take the 2 ends and match them up. Once they're matched, you're going to tie a knot. So you're gonna make a loop around your 2 fingers your pointer and middle finger. I'm gonna take the tail of the short string and pull it over the long string, through the loop, and then pull both ends of this. Now I have a knot. Next, we are going to pin for sewing now, and that means I'm just gonna take my pin heads and I'm gonna put them through both layers of fabric and back up again, just like this. And scoop, I'm gonna take 2 pins and I'm only gonna pin the side that we're gonna sew, and we're only sewing one side. What we're gonna do is we're gonna start by opening up the felt, the needle house, and we're gonna go towards the front. So I'm gonna go from the middle to the front. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna hide the tail and the knot in the side of the book so I don't have to look at it. What we're doing now is we're gonna learn how to do the whip stitch. And I'm gonna go in the same exact spot that I came out the front, but from the back to the front now. And it's gonna continuously come from the back to the front. Pull it up, back to the front, pull it up. So I'm going back to front, I pull it up. I'm gonna go 1/4 inch over from the back to the front, pull it up. 1/4 inch over, back to front, pull it up, remove my pin. And you want to keep it even, not only in the distance between the stitches, but how far in your stitches are. So from the edge, I'm also 1/4 inch in. If this is your first project, it's okay if it's not all in the same spot. You're practicing. Your goal is to eventually get a more even stitch. Okay, now we've gotten to the end. We're gonna go to the back now and we're gonna make a knot. I'm gonna take the needle and I'm gonna go underneath my last stitch on the back, and I'm gonna pull my thread almost all the way through. You'll see there's this little loop, and I'm gonna put my needle through that loop and pull tight. I'm gonna do that 2 more times in the same spot, and that's gonna create our knot. And now I cut my thread, and I put my needle down somewhere I'll remember it in my needle book. And that's your needle book. But I did say I was gonna teach you guys how to do the running stitch as well in this video. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually add little windows and a door to this needle house. And we're gonna do that. I'm gonna use white felt to do that. And I'm going to cut them freehand. Cut a little bit bigger than you think is the general rule of thumb, because it's way easier to shorten something or make it smaller than it is to have to recut the whole thing. I'm gonna I think I need a door that's a little bit smaller than this, but I'm gonna cut it this size. And then I'm also gonna cut 2 windows about 1 inch and 1 inch. So the windows were too big and I cut them down a little bit. Now that I have everything the size that I want, I'm gonna pin them on. And this time you're gonna make sure that you're only pinning through your top layer of the house and the windows and doors. You don't wanna pin through the back layer, because then you're gonna end up sewing through all 3 layers and then your house won't work. Where's that thread that we had before? Here it is. We're gonna rethread our needle, match up the ends, and tie another knot. So what we're going to do is I'm gonna start on the door, and we're gonna learn the running stitch. Like before, we wanna sandwich our knot between both layers. Open up the door, and we're gonna start on the inside, and we're gonna come through the top, and I'm going to tuck my knot under so I can't see it, and I'm going to start to stitch. So with the whip stitch always coming around the edge, the running stitch doesn't do that. If you come up from the top, your thread's coming up the top, you're gonna go back down through the top. And now you're coming out through the bottom, and then you're gonna come back up through the bottom. Now I'm gonna come up from the bottom, because I just came down from the bottom. And now I'm up from the top, down through the top. What I don't wanna do is loop over like this. That's gonna cause a loop around. And now I'm gonna do the side. And I had 3 stitches on the other side, so I wanna mimic that on this side. It's gonna make it look neater. And now I just have the bottom to do of the door. I'm gonna tie my knot on the back, and this one we can't really hide, so we're just gonna do it on the inside. And the same way we did before, through the last stitch, through the loop. And cut our thread. I'm gonna reuse this thread. I'm gonna tie a knot at the end. And I'm gonna do the windows. And there you have it, our very own needle book to hold our needles. Now that you've started sewing, it's a really handy project to have. Thank you so much for watching my video today. I hope that you learned a lot and got what you needed out of it. If you liked the video, make sure that you give it a thumbs up. And if you want to learn more about sewing, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. This is Alexa, Teach Me How to Sew.